Chuck's going to give us his top 5 strikers right now. But before we get into that, his manager at PSV, Peter Bosch, said this about Ricardo Pepi. He's a very good player, but he is unlucky to have a phenom in front of him. Goals, captain, top fitness, and assists. Luke de Jong has it all. However, I thought this was the right time to let Pepi play as well, now that there are only 2 days between today's game and Tuesdays. And as we mentioned, Ricardo Pepi made the most of that opportunity with 2 goals. So using that as a segue, Chuck, I'm very curious to see where you have Ricardo Pepi in your top 5. Let's go from number 5 all the way up to number 1. Like, let's tease your top spot.
Let's tease it. So 5 is Haji Wright.
So he didn't start this past weekend though against Leeds.
So I'm putting Haji Wright as the 5th striker on the list.
Okay.
And Brandon Vasquez is 6. And Haji Wright.
We didn't even ask for Tony. We didn't even ask for 6, and Chuck.
Yeah, I gave you a little 6. You
know, bonus.
Somebody on the outside looking.
That's what Charlie does.
So Haji Wright, we've seen. I think in his last camp, he didn't do well with the U.S. men's national team. He didn't play well. He didn't perform well. It didn't look like he was ever in a rhythm. Like he was forcing the game a little bit. So it's kind of showing with his club form because he hasn't scored a goal since August 16th against Oxford United. He scored a brace in that game. But you could see with his minutes, not hitting 90 minutes, getting substituted and then not starting in the last game against Leeds. I think for me, he's just right now not confident. And strikers go through this, and he's playing left wing. He's asked to do a lot. I think that's helped his development, but he still has a ways to go. So let's go to number 4. Number 4, Timothy Weah. Now, we haven't used him at the 9 with the national team, but because he's now Thiago Motta's backup number 9 to Vlahovic, I just see we've been clamoring for this since the World Cup 2022. That you give Haji Wright gives you pace. Timothy Weah gives you pace. He gives you someone who can stretch him behind. He's confident on the ball. He's a pretty good dribbler. He's a pretty good finisher. I mean, think about some of the opportunities he's had. He's actually a pretty good finisher. I think he's above Haji Wright and Brandon Vasquez. I'd play him at the 9. Okay, now we're starting to get for real. 3, Ricardo Pepi. We've seen kind of right now what his potential is. We've seen how good of a goal scorer he is. We've seen the hard work that he offers, the defensive side of the ball, his pressing, which gets him a lot of goals, his movement. He's always active. But because he's behind Luke de Jong and his club situation is a little difficult, I don't think we'll ever see him get to that next level unless he's playing consistently, and he's not going to be playing consistently at PSV. So that's why he's going to be at 3. 2, Josh Sargent. Now, Tony talked about his season so far. You know, it's decent. 2 goals and 3 assists. Not mind-blowing numbers, but he has been consistent. He does play. He plays 90 minutes every game. You know what you're going to get from him. He makes great runs, the timing of his runs. He can score and assist. I love the 2 assists this past weekend. I always said after that World Cup game against Iran, I wish he didn't get injured because it looked like he finally understood how to be effective with this U.S. men's national team group, and he adapted to the speed of play. So I guess that'll be yet to be determined where he fits into the striker plan for Mauricio Pochettino. And number 1, obviously, Valerian Balogun, finally confident and finally scoring. And you look at the most recent form, scoring in back-to-back Ligue 1 games. Mind you, Monaco is tied at the top of the table with PSG. So this is a strong Monaco side. He is, someone that I think can reach that next level because he's motivated when he's motivated and he's healthy. So that for me, with all the tools that he has, he can. That's why we were all so excited when he said, "I'm going to play for the U.S. men's national team," because he's a clinical goal scorer. And he's very instinctual. It's not like he does one thing super well. He's not the best 1v1 dribbler. He's not the fastest player. He doesn't have sometimes the best way to combine with other players. But there's some things that he does have that you can't teach. And some of that obviously is a technique, but just being able to be in the right place at the right time and his clean strikes with both feet. that's why he's the number one right now.
I think what I do think he does really well, Chuck, is he's excellent at pulling off the shoulder to create that passing lane, right? So if a midfielder is jumping into the space and running at that back four, he does an excellent job of just creating that passing lane. And he did it again this past weekend. Breel Mbolo, a hell of an assist to get him the ball. And then it was up to Flo to slot it in. But I think he does that really well. And I don't know if it's just because of the CONCACAF opponents that we play. Those spaces aren't always open because of a low block, and it's harder to find those passing lanes. Or even if we're playing against a better team, it's just we're having a tough time getting him the ball in general because the other team might be a little bit better or pressing us a little bit higher. We can't find those spaces. But I think he's really, really good at that. I think about your list, and there's really nothing controversial about it.
I saw Tony gave me the
I gave him a side eye on the Timothy Weah as a number 9. Because I want look, he played there. He played there with our youth national teams, right? But let's face it, U20 is not the full national team. Period. End of story. It gives you a sample size, but it's not good enough. He played there at PSG, if you remember, but he played with Neymar kind of underneath him, right? Do you see him? Because if I see, if I see Timothy Weah in a striker position, I see him with a second striker, like a guy that he can kind of run off. I just don't see him as. First off, I don't know much about his hold-up play, right? Because that's really important for our national team, hold-up play. We don't know now with Pochettino, but hold-up play's got to be really, really important. Plus, I think you lose something on the wing without him playing there. So I'm just curious, do you see him as a single striker, or do you see him with two strikers? And I know we've been begging for this for I don't know how long.
You want two strikers or what?
I would love to.
I do. I would love it, man.
I would love to. Are you kidding me? That two strikers is phenomenal. We're seeing a little shift from what we've seen for 6, 7 years, 8 years maybe of the 4-3-3, and a lot of teams would do the 4 with either 2 midfielders at the base or 1 1 and 2 8s, 2 10s with the 3 up top. Now we're starting to see, because of balance, a lot of teams are going back to the 4-4-2, and it depends if it's in possession or out of possession. You're seeing how teams kind of shift, but as of late, Arsenal have been able to do it and do it really well, playing with 2 strikers and having to adjust, figuring out, depending on injuries, you're seeing teams just say, you know what, this makes it so easy for everybody to understand their role in a 4-4-2. Even a 3-5-2, you're seeing teams start to say, you know what, actually having 2 players up there really makes sense. And then players can work off of each other, but 2 that are going to give the defensive midfielder and 2 center backs headaches if you're pulling players out of position. So I would love to see 2 strikers. And you just need a coach who has a clear system so everyone understands, and then you get the most out of, especially for us when we have a lot of athletes, some really strong athletes, and using that to our advantage.
I think if you go to a 3-5-2, let's just use that as our base for this. Then I think Timo Weah is a wing back, right? And then you have, because you could potentially.
So right now it's Dest and Weah fighting for that. If everyone's healthy, right?
If everyone's healthy,
those are 2.
If we played a 3-5-2, then it's Jedi Robinson and Jedi Robinson playing the left side.
Yeah,
there's really nobody else that I trust to get up and down the wing the same way, unless we're playing against an opponent where we know we're gonna have a lot of the ball, and then you could potentially throw a winger out there. Or you could if Jedi was hurt, you could throw a Christian or a Brendan Aronson.
No, you're not throwing Christian out there. Now
I'm just saying you could, because he's just pushing him up high anyway, so it's almost like a front 3. But go ahead.
Yeah, but you don't want to do that, because then you're asking him to defend. You don't want him to be responsible for defending as a left back, essentially.
Oh, 100%. But I'm just saying, against a weaker opponent where we know we're going to have like 85% of the ball. Now, with regard to Pulisic in a 3-5-2, do you make him a second striker and play him underneath the 9, or is he come into midfield? That's where it gets a little bit tricky, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Depends how you play in a 3-5-2, whether you play with 1 holding midfielder and 2 guys in front, or you play with which we call point up, or we play point down with or point up, where you play 2 defensive midfielders and 1 attacking player, or the other way around, right? So it depends how you want to do it. But Christian Clear is on the field, I'd like to see a point down with one holding midfielder. You got 3 center backs already, right? So it's not as if you constantly need another guy in the middle of the field. But yeah, it's so hard. I've been thinking about this since Pochettino was hired, and I'm sure you guys have done the same thing. I'm sure all the viewers have done the same thing. Like, what's Poch going to do? Like, we have zero idea, because I don't know that you can translate what he did at the club level to what he's going to do at the national team level. There's been different rotations for Pochettino throughout his career based on who he's had. So we're going to get an idea. Unfortunately, we have still so many guys that are not available, including a Serginho Dest, who's so important to this team. And by the way, I don't know if you saw his interview this week, one of the most confident cats you're ever going to meet, right? And some of the things he said.
We all knew that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I'm with both you guys, man. If any formation that gives me 2 forwards, I'd be thrilled. At least give me a half hour in the next 2 windows.
Tony. I thought you would have said, give me 4 center backs.
Yeah. Whoever sits in that 6, though, has to protect that back 3 and have to cover some ground. So I'm curious to see who Pochettino brings in, because with Tyler Adams hurt, I feel like that position is still pretty wide open.